What is up? My name is Melissa Makak, and this is Teach the Teach on the Dice Tower, where I teach you how to teach a board game. And in this video, I'll be covering Xia, Legends of a Drift System. Now, I'm assuming you already know how to play this game, and now you're just looking to teach it to other players. There are plenty of ways to teach games. This is just a way that's worked out for me. It could possibly help you out if you have any sort of difficulties teaching games or Xia in particular. I will say that I'm also teaching this as though I'm teaching it with the Embers of a Forsaken Star expansion. So if you don't have that expansion, you could just ignore some of the stuff that doesn't seem very familiar to you. I always start off with the three main things. So the story behind the game, where you are an unknown captain traversing the universe, trying to become a legend. And then how you actually win this game. And to do so, you kind of pick one of these, markers to reach, right? So usually it goes up to 20 fame points, but I would say for the first playthrough for people, you might want to only go to 10. Unless there's only like one person who doesn't know how to play, in which case you could go to 20. But if most of the people there, it's their first time playing, I would say just go up to 10 because there's a lot going on, and that will probably take a good amount of time to get to. And that way they get, a little more familiar with the game without it being so long. But that's my thing. You do what you want to do. And the way the game ends is when somebody reaches those fame points that you marked down. All right, cool. So what I've done is I've made like a little player aid, and I would suggest you do the same for your players. So definitely use the card that came in the box, right? So you have how to win, and I would go through all of this. This is the first thing I would do, is go through like, hey, these are the different ways to actually gain fame points, but you want to set the stage. You want to let them know, like, this is a sandbox game. You could be whatever you want. You could be a merchant, an explorer. You could be an outlaw. You could be lawful. You could do so many different things in this game with all in an effort to ultimately complete some of these things in order to gain fame points. So that's the first thing I would go through, are the different ways to gain fame points. And for some of them, you might want to even like point out like what tokens you're talking about. So for example, the exploration, discard 2 exploration stuff. So you might want to say like, hey, there's some of these exploration tokens on the board. When you have 2 of those, you discard them, and that's one of the ways you could gain fame points or some money. And then I have this player aid that I sort of made. Mostly I kind of just cut and copied out of the player book, the rule book that comes in the game. So like this, I kind of just put, I think that everybody should have this, where it's like, this is what you need to roll, and this is what'll happen if you roll below things when you enter certain barriers. This is like the actions that you can take. It's not very pretty, but it's useful. And on the back side has the shields and what they do, and then also what all the exploration tokens do if you have the Embers of a Forsaken Star expansion. So this also just tells you, I think I got this little part off of Board Game Geek, which you could find. There's tons of player aids on Board Game Geek that you could use. This was one that I just liked, that I kind of sort of made, but I did borrow this little part from Board Game Geek, I believe, where it tells you what happens, what you need to do if you're entering a lawful planet, an outlaw planet, or a neutral planet. And you could explain those as those types of planets come up during the game. There's also dead planets if you have the Embers of a Forsaken Star expansion, which again, you could explain as you go. And that's one of the biggest things. I would not explain every single tile that comes in this game because there's a lot of different things that happen in this universe. So I would explain as things come out, like, hey, this is a nebula, this is what you're gonna have to do. And they could reference that player aid if they ever need to, right? Here's this lawful planet and all that sort of stuff. So again, I wouldn't like overload them with information because there's a lot going on in this game, but definitely as the tiles come out, that's when you wanna explain to them, this is what happens with that tile. With that, I always start off the game with people just kind of picking what ship they want to play as. So right off the bat, so I've already explained the story behind the game, how you win, some of the different ways to gain fame points. And now you get to choose your ship. And I think that that is a way for players to get right into it, okay? So you only give them the phase 1 ships to look at, and I wouldn't go too much over it other than like, yes, this will tell you how much like energy you start off with the game, but that you'll get to upgrade your ship later on as you traverse the galaxy and all that stuff. So don't worry too much. This is also going to tell you like how much cargo space you'll have and how many modifications you'll be able to like put into your spaceship, but pretty much just pick the one that seems the coolest to you, that looks the coolest to you. That's what I usually do. And then I just give them their special ability when they get it. And then I'll explain to them that, yep, that thing, you could use that with your ship. You'll just flip it over. You could use it once per round, usually. And from there, after doing the whole like ships and everybody like picking their ships and having all fun, like, oh yeah, this looks cool, and you're getting your own little like minis and everything, I then tell them about the modifications that they could have. I have this like little makeshift insert that I made. So these are a bunch of different modifications you could have to your ship, and you could explain that it tells you right on the mod how much it costs, and you give them all their like 4,000 pieces of credits that they all start with for the game. I know some people play with 3,000 credits that you start off with, but in Embers of a Forsaken Star, it starts out with 4,000 credits. Which is cool, gives you a little more leeway. And I think it's more fun for like newer players anyway to just give them a little bit more money so that they could use up some of these mods. Now, when you're talking about the mods, you're gonna wanna let them know that some of these are gonna protect you from the environment, some of them are gonna protect you from other ships like shooting at you, whether it be NPCs, and let them know that you'll get to NPCs a little bit later. Some of them will allow you to have like extra cargo space if you really want to like hold cargo, and cargo is the thing that you sell. You want to explain those sort of things. You don't want to go too in depth with everything, but letting them know that they tell you which die you get to roll when you use them, and it shows you how many use spaces they have, and that's how many times they could use each what are these mods per round essentially. So that's something that you want to tell them, and then explaining if you have the Embers of a Forsaken Star, these little other kinds of modifications that you can put onto your ship as well. So that's pretty much like the brunt of it for the beginning before really getting into it, and then you like allow players to start like building out their ships and everything. You want to tell them you definitely want to have some sort of engine so that you can actually move in this game, and letting them know, yes, this is a roll and move game, but especially with Embers of a Forsaken Star, you can mitigate that a little bit by getting some of these GTSs. So that's something. But you can also spend a little bit more cash to get better engines and everything. So, there's modifications to what you can do here. And mitigations of the rules. So that is, so everybody would start, picking out their modifications, spending their money, and starting to get really into things. That's when I bring out the economy board, and I let somebody else go ahead and set this up. That way they feel like, they're into it. Maybe pick on the dude that's like, they're starting to fade out, they're a little confused, whatever it might be. It's like, hey, can you just like set this up? All you got to do is roll a d6 and just let them know how this gets set up. And with that, you can then explain to people that this is the economy market. When a good runs out from there, you can no longer buy that good from some of the planets that produce that good because it's all out. But you'll gain 1,000 credits if you're able to produce it. How do you produce it? By selling something that converts into it, okay? And letting them know that the board tells you what converts into what. But essentially, it goes around in a circle. So easy enough for the economy board. And that's when you could kind of get started. I would say that you should be the first player. And go ahead. Now, the one thing we did not cover are the NPCs, okay? And so with the NPCs, you could go ahead and hand them out, the scoundrel, the enforcer, the merchant, and just like let the player have it next to them or whatever. And I wouldn't explain everything about the NPCs until they actually come out. And you as the instructor should know when they come out. And in fact, you could even keep them by you and just start like bringing them out as they come along, right? So let's say the merchant comes out first. Okay, I'll take out the merchant and I'll say that this is happening, this is coming out because whatever planets showed up. And then I'll put it by me. And then let's say the enforcer comes out. So, okay, the enforcer's coming out now because this planet showed up, and I'm going to put it right next to Sally over here. So at the end of her turn, this is going to go off. And then once it happens, once it goes to Sally's turn, she goes through her whole turn, then you could explain like what the enforcer does and all that sort of stuff. But that's essentially it with that. They might have some sort of questions about missions, which you could explain, just saying that, you know, like it tells you exactly what you need to do. You'll keep it hidden and until you reach the first part. And then the second part, you'll flip it over. You'll put whatever it says, whatever amount it says to put on the card. And then you can finish it out by delivering it to where it needs to be. And you can let them know that there's some lawful missions colored in blue and outlaw missions colored in orange. But essentially that is it, and that is how I teach Xayah Legends of a Drift system. It is very, I go through it where like there's a lot of explaining in the beginning in terms of like, this is how you gain fame points, there's different ways of winning and all that stuff. I really try to set the stage. I let them get into it as quickly as possible by picking their ship, buying modifications. They might have some questions about some of the mods and like, why would I have this instead of this? What should I kind of go for? And I'll ask them, I'll say like, well, what kind of like captain do you want to be? Do you want to go the lawful route? Do you want to be more of an explorer? Do you want to be a merchant? And then I'll sort of guide them into what they might want to do in terms of that and helping them out with that first part. And then most of it is explaining it as it's going along, especially when those tiles are flipping. You want to explain like the scanning and the jumping, the pros and cons to all of that when they reach like the edge of a board and things like that. But that's why also when you go and you're the first player, you make sure that you are explaining everything you are doing and why you are doing it. Okay, this might not be the best for you in order to win, but it is the best in order for everybody to understand the game. Anyway, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear any sort of tips and tricks that you have in order to teach Xayah Legends of a Drift system, especially with the Embers of a Forsaken Star expansion. I think this is the one expansion that I have that I feel is absolutely necessary for this game, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.